Hi, everybody. Welcome back to this series of In Conversation with Justine Friedman. We have had already 3 amazing discussions between myself and Roleen Kaplan. And today is our 4th conversation. And we're leading on from our last discussion where we were discussing habits and breaking bad habits and creating new ones. And where we left off was discussing comfort zones. So this is really what today's conversation is going to be about comfort zones. Are they good for us? Are they bad for us? How do we move out of them if we need to? And I'm welcoming back Roleen Kaplan. Thank you so much, Roleen, for joining me again today.
Hi, Justine. Nice to see you again.
How have you been? I know we've had a little bit more of a break than we were expecting. Last week was a jam-packed week for both of us.
I've been good, thank God. And you, have you been good?
Good, yes. I had a wonderful time away. I went with my family on holiday, which was a very much needed break. And I feel very rejuvenated and ready to continue our discussions.
Great. Well, let's begin. It's interesting.
Very interesting. I know that this is something that for you, you're quite passionate about, as you are with all your work. And I know you have some incredible insights to share with us today about comfort zones. So maybe if you can give a little bit of background about what comfort zones are all about, how they serve us, when they don't serve us, what we should be doing about it. So I'm giving the floor over to you.
Okay, so I've got a couple of things written down, as well as I'll chat about it just in general. But I've written down a couple of things that I've been thinking about over the last couple of weeks, or since our last podcast, and or maybe even longer than that, because it consistently happens. I just want to say that to move out of comfort zones it's a very difficult thing. No one must think that it's easy, because it's not easy. Some people will say, just put your mind to it and do it. But in most cases, it's not that simple. There are 2 kinds of comfort zones. There's a negative comfort zone and there's a positive comfort zone. So I'm going to be focusing really on the negative comfort zones. And the negative comfort zones focus on, I'm staying in this place that I'm in because I am afraid to move out of it. Not because I like being in it, because I'm afraid to leave it. That's 2 completely different things. So to leave a comfort zone means to let go of a way of thinking about yourself. More often than not, it's not about the situation you're in, it's about you. So it's about letting go of how you think about yourself, what you think about yourself, and it's about being trusting of yourself and knowing that the position that you're going into, or the space you're going into, is safe enough for you to take that step out of where you're at and into something new. So there's a process that goes into letting go and moving into a new comfort zone. It doesn't just happen. Most people are not comfortable with leaving a comfort zone. So most people will not just say, okay, I'm going to just go and do it. Most people will take time to do it.
It sounds to me like taking the time to do it and before you actually do it also has a lot to do with your believing in yourself, like your own self-worth and confidence to be able to do it. I would imagine that if that fear is so overwhelming, that it's much harder to leave the space if you don't believe in yourself enough to do it.
Exactly. You have to believe, even if it's a small measure, you have to believe in yourself that you will be okay. You have to believe that you will be safe, and you have to trust that you will be safe. So there's so many deep-seated thoughts and feelings that come into leaving a comfort zone. So I want to start off with something that Wawa Jacobson spoke about, if I can. Firstly,
right.
And you know, he's great. He's great.
Absolutely, yes.
So I listened to something that he was speaking about, and he said, of course, there is a much bigger picture that we do not understand. So when a person is trying to leave a comfort zone, it's not just that moment that they're leaving. There's a much bigger picture involved that they're letting go of. There's a much bigger picture involved that they're stepping out of. And that's part of this huge fear. It's not just one moment. It's many moments in that moment. And we can relate it, for example, to people who are trying to change the way they're eating. It's not just, okay, well, right now, stop eating loads of carbohydrates and junk food and start eating salads. There's a whole emotional response that goes into leaving that moment and stepping into a new comfort zone, a new habit that becomes that comfort zone. I'm sure you've encountered people like that.
That's interesting, because I had a conversation with a client yesterday in particular about this. She has body image issues where she's not completely comfortable with her body, or she is at the moment, but she's so fearful that if she takes on a new way of eating, that it's going to cause her to gain weight, where what she's doing at the moment is not healthy. And if she's taking the step, but it's with a lot of concern and fear about what it may actually bring for her, and not being sure whether she can trust the process. So what she's doing at the moment is keeping her quite stuck where she is, but there's so much more on the other side for her to get to. But there is this fear that keeps somebody stuck in that. This is how I'm eating. This is how I'm living. And even though I know in my heart of hearts it may not be healthy for me and it may not be right for me, I'm not sure if I can trust what the alternative is. Well, I'm not sure I can trust myself to see through what that alternative would be.
That's right. So the same happens in relationships. A lot of people stay in relationships that are toxic, that are unhealthy, and they find it very difficult to leave because it's a comfort zone. Even though it's a toxic comfort zone, it's a comfort zone they know how to work with. So when it comes to food, when it comes to relationships, when it really comes to anything that a person needs to step out of, we're looking at the relationship we have with ourselves, not what's going on outside of ourselves. It's the relationship we have with ourselves that we need to shift, that we need to change in order to move into something different. So I had something else that Y.Y. Jacobson spoke about, which I absolutely love, and what stood out for me. He said, we have to spiritualize our material life.
Say more. That sounds very interesting.
A person needs to spiritualize their material life. In other words, people need to move out of the comfort of the materialism and step into spirituality. In other words, a person needs to look at the food they're eating, the relationships that they're having, the relationships with themselves, and ask themselves, am I having a material relationship with myself, an egoistic relationship with myself, or am I having a spiritual relationship with myself? Because we are here to spiritualize the material world. Just something I'm throwing out there to think about. I think it's very deep. I think it's an amazing concept to think about, and perhaps we can elaborate more on it when we give our workshop.
Definitely. So that for me is something that I work very closely with, specifically with those people who are open to it, that we are not merely a body, but we have the soul. In fact, there's a wonderful quote that I love to always bring up time and time again, that is, I am a soul and I have a body. And therefore, the way that if we can think according to what our purpose is, not just in a physical way, but as that we have a soul that is enlivening our physical experiences in the world, if we are pulled down constantly by the material and the physical world, then what ends up happening is that we tend to dull out that spiritual component. And I think that is also what causes so much, I want to use the word dis-ease in our lives, because we are ignoring a huge part of ourselves.
Exactly. I couldn't have put it better. So there are many different areas, if you look at it, where we have had to move out of comfort zones. And Rabbi Schusterman, another person that I was just reading, he was writing a post, and I read it just a couple of hours earlier. And he was saying a baby in its mother's womb leaves its comfort zone to enter an unknown world. He also speaks about a butterfly leaving its cocoon to fly away into the big wide world. So we see that in every aspect of life, there is the consistent transition, the consistent movement of going from one place into another, of going from a comfort zone into something that might not be comfortable to start off with, but then will become comfortable. So I'll take us back also to Egypt. We had to leave Egypt, okay? And we ourselves have, as you and I were speaking about earlier, this enslaved mentality where we keep ourselves stuck in our own Egypt. We keep ourselves stuck in our own thinking that keeps us stuck in a place that we do not actually want to be in, but are comfortable in. And we need to leave that place. We need to leave our Egypt.
So you speaking about these three scenarios of the baby leaving the womb and a butterfly leaving its cocoon and, you know, leaving our own Egypt, our own enslaved mindset. It reminds me of a story that Rabbi Twersky spoke about. I don't know.
About the lobster.
About the lobster. And
amazing.
I think this is so incredibly important, because he says that, I mean, a lobster does not have the same shell that it carries with it its whole life. When it starts out as a teeny tiny lobster, it has a teeny tiny shell. And then it grows, and that shell becomes uncomfortable, and it has to go off and like hide away to protect itself while it sheds that shell and grows a new one. And then it has the appropriate shell for that stage of life. And then as it grows, it constantly has to repeat this process over and over again. And it's, to me, that sounds like how we need to approach our own lives, because if we are trying to expand in our own lives and be better versions of ourselves and experience life in a better way, but we still have that very small shell encasing us, first of all, I think it becomes incredibly uncomfortable, and we can't possibly grow out of it unless we actually learn to shed it first.
Yeah. I remember listening to him talking about that as an example. We need to let go of so much stuff to get out of our comfort zones. We need to shed that shell. And if you think about from the beginning of life all the way up to the twilight years, we are consistently shifting and moving from one comfort zone into discomfort, creating comfort, moving out of that comfort zone into something that's more uncomfortable, creating a comfort zone from that. So we are consistently shifting and changing and creating new comfort zones for us, for ourselves, all the time, but we don't recognize it. And we find ourselves often very stuck. And it's in the stuckness that we can find the growth. So often the thoughts and the feelings that keep us stuck are fear, anger, and hate.
Those are very powerful feelings.
Fear, anger, and hate, and shoot out into, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I don't trust myself, I don't believe in myself. I can't do this. I am not enough.
Wow.
So that whole plethora of thoughts and feelings, the intimate connection between the two, often keeps us stuck in negative comfort zones. And again, we can address that at another time, in our workshop.
Okay, so moving out of that and learning to find value within ourselves and trust ourselves in order to be able to move out of that stuck place is definitely a big area that we're going to cover. And I think that together with everything that we've already discussed, the breathing techniques that you want to bring in, together with understanding on a cognitive level, and be able to understand the feelings that are involved with it and how to be able to shift out of that, I think this brings a lot of value to so many people because, we all have areas in our lives, no matter how hard we work at it, which we can benefit from learning different tools and techniques of being able to live in a much more free state of mind and in a place where we can really feel a greater sense of living our purpose. I think one of the problems that I always find is in keeping ourselves stuck is that we don't allow ourselves to feel that we are free enough to express out into the world what we are here to be doing, because those fears keep us from doing that. Wow. Okay. So today was an incredibly, very deep and also very powerful conversation about comfort zones. And it has built on our past discussions that we've had. And what I'd like to do next week is we're going to just wrap up and tie up everything that we've discussed up until now, so that we can really give more of like maybe some bullet points of what we believe, how we both work, how we feel that we are able to assist and guide both our clients and those people that we're going to be working with in the future, especially in the workshop sessions, what they will be able to take away from these discussions and how they can be supported through working with us, through attending the workshops. And we are timing it specifically for Elo. We're going to decide on a date and we'll launch, and everyone will be able to have a pre-list for those courses or those workshops that we're going to be doing. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up today that we haven't touched on?
I think if I haven't said it, how people turn to food as a comfort. How people feel really bad about something and then they turn to food for comfort. I'd like to address that as well, perhaps in the workshops. And then also if people have a list of questions that maybe they want to send through that we can address in the workshops, that we can build into our discussion, would also be a good idea.
Absolutely. Okay, so that we're going to ask those people who are going to be participating to send through questions ahead of time, so that
they have, yeah,
absolutely. So this can be very much speak to what your concerns are, what your questions are, how you want to be best supported through this process, because it's a process that is incredibly exciting, but can be also very fear-provoking as well, and can feel quite overwhelming.
That's the whole thing. Is I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed by needing to leave comfort zones, by needing to change, and we're in a state of needing to change. The whole world's changing, yeah. And we need to move with the change, but we need to move forward into the positive rather than retreat backwards into a part of ourselves that is primitive and perhaps just that's toxic. That's not good enough.
It's just not working for us anymore.
And it's not working for us. No. So we need to let go of that. So I would like it if people would write, some questions and send it through to us so that we can look at it and we can address it whilst we are actually chatting about it in the workshops.
Perfect. Wonderful. Okay. So that we'll tie up all the loose ends and give some main messages next week in our discussion. And then we will give also information about the upcoming workshops. I'd like to just thank everybody for listening. Thank you for tuning in on every week that we've been presenting these episodes. And if you found value in it, please subscribe and like to my YouTube channel. I'm always trying to put more information out there on this topic and on other topics as well. And please, as we said, send through questions so that we are able to address what your intimate concerns are, what you specifically would like answers to and support on. Roleen, thank you as always for joining me today, and I look forward to our discussion next week.
Okay, be
Great.
well.
Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful week, and thank you so much for listening.